Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. As Richard mentioned, our virtual training number 6 is going to focus on the MDN system blank and NTN field audit program changes and also feedback. We want to hear from you guys about this program and those of you who participate in it, and questions you might have, ideas you have for improving it, that sort of thing. As Richard mentioned, my name is Amy Mager. For those who don't know me, I am the NADP Sample and Data Processing Manager. So the group of people that I oversee here at NADP, we are the folks that receive all of your samples and get them logged in and on their way to the lab. We also prepare all of the supplies and get those shipped out to the sites. In addition to that, I also supervise our data managers who review all the data after it's been analyzed and create the reports and get those sent out to you. So just a little background on what I do. So on my title slide here, you can see a picture of, oh, hold on one second. I want to get the laser pointer. Okay, there we go. So what you can see here, these are some pictures of, hopefully these look familiar to most or some of you. These are bottles, examples of bottles you would have received in the past. For the ones on the left here are for the MDN system blank program, and the ones on the right are examples of bottles you may have seen for the NTN field audit program. Okay, so like I said, hopefully most of you have participated in one of these programs or the other, so that this talk will be familiar to you. If not, it's possible that you're either a new operator or it's possible that your site has never participated in one of these programs. I just want to give a little bit of background and overview of these programs. So what are the system blank and field audit programs? So basically what it involves, it's a reference solution that's sent to sites, usually once a year or every other year. And then following a dry week, 50% of that reference solution is poured into the funnel thistle sample bottle sample train for MDN, or the bucket bag setup, and eventually to the 1 liter bottle for NTN. And then both the bottle containing the remaining reference solution and the sample bottle that you've created by doing this process are returned to the lab. And basically these programs, what they are, they're quality assurance programs intended to measure the effects of field exposure, handling, and processing on the chemistry of precipitation samples. So up to this point in the past, these programs have been coordinated by Greg Weatherby, who's with the USGS out of Colorado. And I believe Greg is planning to join us today. So Greg, if you're out there, feel free to jump in at any point. We'll also, at the end, when we're having a Q&A session, if you have any questions for Greg at that point or myself, we can obviously talk about those. So starting this year in 2022, these programs will be coordinated by the NADP labs here at the Wisconsin State Laboratory of Hygiene. Okay, so the main purpose of this training is that because we at the lab are taking over these programs, there's going to be a few changes, and we wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that and weren't taken by surprise. So what do these changes mean for the sites? So basically, your system blank and field audit supplies are going to start arriving inside your MDN cooler and your NTN supply box, as opposed to receiving these in a separate box from Greg and his team at the USGS. Oops, sorry. The bottles that contain the solutions are also going to look different. So if you think back to my title slide, those bottles that you saw there, we're going to be using a different type of bottle. So just want to make you aware of that. And I will have pictures of all of these in a minute here. We are going to provide you with field forms for the field audit samples and system blank samples, just like Greg and his team did. But we're going to add some pre-printed labels to, one, help these field forms stand out to you on site, and also to just make it a little easier to fill out the forms in general for both of us. Greg in the past has used a postcard notification system to notify him when one of these samples has been processed. And we're going to be replacing that with an email survey. The return shipping for NTN is going to look a little different than it has in the past. And of course, we're going to send you updated instructions that will outline all of these changes. And so again, I'm going to, in further slides, I'm going to go through some of these in more detail. Okay, what's staying the same? So the way that you process the sample on site, nothing is going to change related to that. So you don't need to worry about that part. As has been done in the past, each MDN site will receive a system blank each year. Now, there are a couple sites that we have not sent a system blank sample to for MDN. And those are sites that rarely have a dry week, like Puerto Rico 20. I noticed that John was on here. So John, if you're feeling left out, that's the reason why, is just you guys get a lot of rain there. And as in the past, we're going to send 100 NTN sites each year a field audit sample. And if you don't know, our NTN network consists of about 265 samples. So that's approximately half of the network each year that will receive a field audit sample. And return shipping labels will be provided for the field audit as they have in the past. So that will stay the same. Are there any questions so far? I meant to say at the beginning that, this can be pretty informal. So if anybody has a question, please just feel free to jump in and we can answer that question. Okay, so here's some slides to show you some specifics of what I'm talking about what's going to change. So let's focus first on the system blank program. Again, this is for the MDN program. So the reference solution that you're going to receive from us is going to come in a 500 ml PETG bottle. It's going to look exactly like this or very similar to this. It's going to have the same markations on it as far as how much you should pour out, basically pouring out 50% of the sample into the sample train. We are also going to include a couple of field forms for you. And like I said, we're going to have some pre-printed labels on these field forms. I'll have a close-up of these forms in a second, but basically this information down here is very similar to what Greg and his team had handwritten on these forms. So it shouldn't be anything, you shouldn't be taken by surprise by anything. And then this is just a picture of what the the system blank sample will look like when it shows up. We're going to put this reference solution bottle and the two forms. We're just going to stick those into that empty space in the MDN cooler. And then when you're shipping this back to us, you'll do the same thing. You can put that system blank bottle and the sample bottle that you create into the cooler. So everything will fit. You don't have to ship anything separately for MDN. Like I said, here's a close-up of these two field forms and the pre-printed labels. So I just want to point out a few things on here. So as you know, you need two field forms for this process. So one of them is for the system blank bottle portion. And basically this is the portion of that reference solution that remains in the original bottle. You fill out a field form for that sample. Then you also fill out a field form for the portion that you have poured into your sample train and into the MDN bottle that's sitting inside your sampler. That's the MDN bottle portion. We're also going to add a line here for processed, and this is a spot where you can fill in the date and time that you performed the system blank procedure. So the date and time that you poured that reference solution into your sample train. And then I just want to point out that we're also going to have these notations on here, DK and DF. These are things that are important to us when the samples arrive back here at the lab. These are the notations that we use for these samples on our end. And This will help us when these show up to get them logged in correctly and efficiently. So you can basically ignore that out in the field, but that's a piece that's helpful for us. Okay. Before I move on to NTN, are there any questions about what I've shown so far related to MDN and the system blank? Okay. Richard, are you keeping an eye on the chat? I assume you are.
I am, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay. All right, so let's move on then to the field audit. Again, this is the similar procedure that happens for the NTN network. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create something that we're calling a field audit kit. And basically what that's going to exist of is a 1 liter bottle that's going to have the reference solution in it, the 2 field forms that you'll need, again, with the pre-populated labels, and then also a return shipping box that you'll be able to put both samples into and your field forms, and you'll be able to return that all in one shipment. Here's just a couple more pictures. This is a picture of the field audit kit inside of your supply box. We'll probably orient this in a different manner so that the bottle is straight up and down. We'll probably tuck it in along the side, something like that. On the outside of the box that contains this, we're going to make sure there's a sticker so that when you see it, you know it's in there and you know, okay, all right, I've got this and I should process my field audit sample. Here's just a few more pictures. This is of the labeled return shipping box. So we'll make sure it has one of our address labels on it. We'll have it labeled as a field audit kit to help us when it comes back. Here's a picture of that return shipment box assembled and showing you that it'll fit both of your sample bottles and your field forms. And then wanted to point out, this is something we're going to put on your return shipment box. It's a reminder label, just reminding you to make sure you've included both of your bottles and your forms, and then asking you to use either the QR code or this survey link to fill out some information, letting us and also Greg at USGS, who's going to continue to process and analyze all of this quality control data, letting us know that you have submitted your field audit sample and it's on the way to us. And I'm going to give you some more details about this a little bit later. We'll have you do this for MDN as well. Okay. Again, here's a close-up of these pre-printed labels on the field audit forms. Again, this is the same information that Greg and his team had handwritten in there, but we're going to use these pre-printed labels. Again, there's one for the bottle portion. So that's the portion of the reference solution that remains in the bottle we sent you. Then there's the bucket portion that the portion of the reference solution you poured into your bucket and then into your 1 liter bottle. A line for putting down the date and time that you processed this sample, and then the DF and DK notations for our reference here at the lab. Okay, any questions about that? Field audit for NTN. Okay, all right, then I want to talk about, so what I just mentioned a little bit ago about the record of sample submission and why we want a record of sample submission. It's useful for us to clear up questions during data processing. So if you've indicated that you processed a field audit sample on a certain date, and then we get that sample, it's been analyzed, and we're looking at results after the fact, if anything looks odd about that, and we question, okay, you know, maybe this isn't really a field audit sample, maybe something got mixed up, that's having this record of submission will help us. We're also going to use it as a way to record or to monitor which sites have or have not submitted their field audit sample, which will then allow us to reach out to those who have not submitted the sample before the end of the year. And as I said in the past, Greg used a postcard process for this, and we're going to switch this to utilizing a survey link, which is down here, and you'll have this link in all of your instruction materials and such. And then and or scanning this QR code, which we'll have available in your instructions and also on a label on the return shipment boxes. Okay, this is just a quick example of what the survey will look like when you go to that link. So entering your name, your site ID, was it a dry week? What time did you, what the date and time that you actually performed this? And more information there that will help us determine how the sample was processed. Okay, timeline. So we are hoping to send out the system blank and field audit reference solutions to sites in April or May. And we'd like sites who receive these to process them by the end of the year, so the end of 2022. You'll have approximately 6 months to complete it. For 2023, we'll be getting these out a little bit earlier in the year because we'll have this process in place, so you'll have a little more time in subsequent years. That is the end of my presentation. Originally, when I made this slide, I just had this nice springtime picture on here. And then, oh, is this gonna work for me? Nope. Today, oh, I guess I can't get it to go. This is a video of a snowstorm we had this morning. That was one of the most impressive snowstorms I've ever seen. The flakes were as big as like baseballs. It was crazy. So anyway, welcome to spring in Wisconsin. Okay, so now we have time for some questions, answers, and feedback about this program in general. So I'm curious to hear from all of you if you have anything you'd like to share with us about the system audit or system blank or field audit programs.
Hi, Amy. It's Colton Newton with BC22, BC23. We're new to operating those stations. I was just wondering, how are the 100 sites selected?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So sorry, I'm trying to get back to my, Greg provided me with the list of 200 sites that he typically sends these reference solutions to. And he based that off of sites that have just been consistent about participating in the past. And also he's left out sites that rarely have dry weeks. So it's just a combination of sites that have consistently participated in the past and that we would have a good chance of having a dry week where one of these samples could be processed. Anything else?
Hey, Amy.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, everybody. Great presentation, Amy. I think that what you guys are doing with this implementation is just really spot on, and I think it's going to work great. It'll be a little bit more efficient, burn less jet fuel, save on shipping costs, things like that. So I think that what you guys put together here is going to work great. I guess if I could add to just a couple things, what should you absolutely never do with these samples? This is, I can't stress enough, it's for a dry week only. Never, ever pour the solution into a sample. It hasn't happened a lot, but it has happened a couple of times. So don't ruin a real sample by adding this QC sample. This is only after you've had a dry week. You just want to rinse that container or the sample train, see what kind of contamination we have. It also kind of tells us about stability of analytes. If we're losing particularly ammonium nitrate and hydrogen ion from the pH, So it tells us about our sample stability and also tells us about our contamination. I think some people kind of wonder why we do this. I'm going to try this. If I can. Oh, the host is disabled sharing. That's fine. If you want to see why we do this, there are charts in USGS reports for the precipitation chemistry QA project. And there's also the same chart on my website. And you can see what the contamination levels have done over the years since 1978.
Greg, you can share now.
Okay. And basically, I guess I'll share this really quick, and hopefully this will work. Did it do it?
It's working at it. There you go.
It's working at it. Okay. So you should be seeing a bar chart where these red bars are the last 3 years. These are 3-year moving increments for each one of these bars. So the last bar is 2018 through 2020. And so you can see that our contamination levels have come up for several constituents. Come down for some, but popped up for others. Why is that? Well, one reason might be we went to bag sampling, and maybe we have some contaminants that are adhering to those bags that didn't adhere to the bucket, or they come off the bags whereas it didn't come off the bucket. Don't know, but could be a variety of things. But we try to look at the trend in this data and to see if what we're doing in the field, what we're doing in the lab, is maybe affecting the contamination level. And so another thing is, if you looked at the trends in these contamination levels, let's say you're looking at a trend in sulfate deposition for your site, and if your trend looks like this, then maybe your trend is all due to contamination and not so much, you know, an actual environmental signal. So it kind of helps us to, you know, ground truth whether the trends are real too. So I guess what I'm getting at is it's important. And so when you get the sample, try to run it on your next dry week, and if you miss, okay, try the next dry week, you know. So I just wanted to kind of stress the importance and what we do with the data. So I'll stop sharing now. Okay, I clicked the button. You can tell me.
I have a comment. This is Wisconsin 10. Yeah, and since we went to the bag sampling, the new lids, they're difficult to get on in the summer, but up here in northern Wisconsin, where we're at, they just simply don't go on in the winter. You're going to contaminate it just trying to get it to go. That could be one of the reasons you're seeing some contamination. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Sure. Yeah, could be. Yeah, and that's something that we'll discuss in like the network operations subcommittee at the spring meeting and the fall meeting. And we like to encourage all site operators to, you know, tune into that if you can, because we like hearing from site operators and just the kind of feedback that you're giving us, Joe.
Thank you.
Does anyone who has processed these samples in the past have any questions about filling out the forms or what they should or shouldn't be recording?
Hi, this is Liz Garcia from Virginia 28. I have, well, a question, I guess. I've always been a little bit unsure about whether or not my collector has fully opened or not, because I don't have the ability to see my rain data until I've gone back to my headquarters office and downloaded the rain gauge data and then seen it. By that point, it's too late to go back up to change out a sample, since my site and my office are about an hour apart. Is there like I mean, used to look in the bucket and say like, hey, there's no water in there at all. But now with the bag, it's harder to say like, hey, there's a couple drops of water in there. There's no water, without like really kind of moving the bag around to look at the little corners. What would be the best way to say like, I don't want to ruin the 1 or 2 drops of water that's in there, but I also don't want to not sample. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. I guess I would say, so for the NTN field audit, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but if the operator were to take the bucket back to their lab and be able to really look at the bag closer, and if it truly is there that there isn't anything in the bag, it's okay to pour the reference solution in at that point when it's back at the lab, correct? Or do we want them actually pouring it in while it's out in the field?
Oh no, you can pour it in there when you get back to the lab. It doesn't have to be in the field. You could retrieve the bucket, you know, put a lid on the bucket, bring that back to the lab, and then determine whether you think you had precip or not by looking at your record whenever you can, and then process the sample. It doesn't have to be done in the field. In fact, it might be even better that you didn't do it in the field, because you got more dry exposure time when you're sitting there pouring the solution into the bucket. So it's perfectly acceptable to do that back at your facility. I get this kind of question a lot, and in the future, I guess we're going to have to I don't know, we might have to think about how we're going to field these questions in the future. I certainly don't mind people emailing me, calling me. I encourage that. I think you can call Amy, call Richard, and hopefully I'll give you about the same advice. I mean, basically, what we don't want is we don't want there to be any possibility of there being precip. So someone might email me and say, hey, I've got this site, in Florida, and I'm not sure if it was, we had some misty days. I'm not sure if it opened, and what if it looks dry, but maybe it opened from precipitation. Is that okay? No, it's not okay. If you think that the collector opened because of any kind of moisture or precipitation, that means wet deposition occurred at the site, and we just can't take that chance. I mean, that's really not contamination. That's deposition that went into that bucket. So, but if you're certain that hey, I had a dry week, it's been 95 degrees here and hasn't rained in 10 days. Well, then I think you're pretty safe in processing your sample. It's those what if scenarios, and another thing is, we used to specify a long time ago. We used to specify that you can't have any lid openings. Well, that's not right. You can definitely have lid openings. It's just that they can't be from precipitation. So especially with these new optical sensors on the NCON collectors, they can be opened by dust, blowing snow, insects, anything that will break that beam for the required amount of time and the number of particles it needs to detect will open that collector. And that's exactly what we want to try to characterize. When those things open and it's not precipitation, that's opportunities for contamination. So your collector opens, that's okay, so long as it wasn't from any kind of moisture. So, I mean, birds, okay, what about birds? That's moisture. Well, yeah, if it's open from birds perching on the sensor, sure, we want to characterize contamination, those kind of situations. So no dew, no mist, fog, any kind of light precipitation that might be opening it up. If you're not sure, don't run it. So, but we get those questions all the time. If and it's certainly, you know, advisable to call me, call Richard, call Amy, you know, and if you have a question, and we'll help you decide whether to run it or not.
I would add for MDN sites, yeah, that's not practical for, you know, you can't take the sample train back with you to the office. We are, you know, sites with the new Androids, we are working on developing something like an additional program that we'd have to put on that will kind of give a summary of the week, similar to the way the old PDAs used to operate. So we are working on that and hopefully get something out, at least in a test phase for some of the sites. So.
One thing I do want to bring up, because I know that I've seen a couple questions about this, just like written on forms and things. You do not need to, and we don't want you to submit a form for a dry sample for the week that you process the field audit or the system blank. So basically you should just be sending back 2 forms, one for, you know, the bottle that contains the reference solution, and one for the sample you've just created. Those are the only 2 forms we need back. You do not need to submit a 3rd form indicating it was a dry sample. So in case anyone was wondering about that.
Oh, I guess one more thing that I could add is sometimes we get questions about, you know, what, you know, I didn't have a dry week, or, you know, the sample's expired now, and so what do I do? Do you want this back? Basically all these solutions that are going on to you are non-toxic, not acidified. You know, you could basically water your plants with them. So, I mean, you shouldn't have any reservations about disposing of the solution. What they are is synthetic rainwater samples for field audit, and it's deionized water for the mercury. And so, so they're completely safe, and they can be disposed of. It's probably best not to return them to the laboratory. However, I don't know if the lab is going to get into reusing the PETG bottles. PET, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The PETG bottles for mercury. Those are kind of expensive, and so it might be nice to return the bottle at least. So, you know, we could talk about that, about PETG bottle returns. Is certainly, if you have an open slot in the cooler, I think that it'd be no big deal to send it to the lab, but you'd have to send it to the lab and make sure that they know that you didn't process the sample. So could be some confusion there. You know, if they're getting a bottle of water back, not processed, you know, why is that? So we'll have to think about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it would be, if, you know, December 31st comes and you realize you haven't been able to process it. If you were to stick that full bottle back into your MDN cooler and send it back with just a clear indication, you know, not used, that would be fine. Yeah. And then we can decide if we're going to reuse it or not. Yeah, like Greg mentioned, we haven't quite gotten there.
Okay. Yeah.
How are the results reported out? Like if someone participated in this, did it for their site, is there a way for them to find out the results from what their sample showed?
Well, someone can always call me for the results for their individual site, and I'm happy to share that with them. We do publish all of the data that we use in our reports, all the data that we collect. That's only every couple of years. We write the report every 2 years, and since not a lot of people read those reports, we're even considering not publishing them in the future. But for now, we're publishing the reports every 2 years. And along with every USGS report, there must be a data release of some sort, and we release our data on ScienceBase. So you can obtain the data there. But if someone had a question about what their contamination levels look like for their particular site, they can always contact me. We don't do individual site data computation and distribution.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's more informative for us as a network to put all of the data together and statistically summarize all this data together to get a robust measurement of contamination and sample stability.
Okay. We can open this questions up to anything regarding sampling, either MTN or MDN or NTN. If you have other questions, we can definitely answer those for you, either on shipping of supplies, equipment, your data reports, anything like that.
Hey, Richard,
Rick,
it's Colton.
Oh, go ahead, Colton.
Oh, no, you can go ahead, Zach. It's all good.
Mine's really quick, and it's still just about, I just wanted to add this maybe to what Amy said too, as a small detail related to the sampling period, like date on, date off. I think it is kind of a confusing thing for the, at least for me, the NTN related DFDKs, just that they're not submitting a dry sample form with it, but the sample dates of those samples would be that same on date and off date from that sampling period week. I think I've just seen a lot of different things put in there, so maybe it just hasn't been clarified for everyone.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up, Zach. Hopefully that makes sense. So on both of those forms that you're filling out, you'll put in the on and off dates of your bucket or your bottle, even though, for your reference solution sample that comes back, obviously that was never out in the field or whatever, but for our purposes and to keep the, sample submission periods consistent and continuous, we need those on and off dates from that Tuesday to Tuesday on both of those forms. And that'll be, I know Greg has that explained very well in his instructions. And like I said, we're going to be updating the instructions to incorporate some of these small changes. So we'll go over all of that and make sure that's in there very clearly. Thanks for bringing that up, Zach. That's a good point.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Hey, it's Colton, BC 2223. I know it's quite early still, just wondering if there's been any confirmation that the site surveys that are scheduled for this year in Canada will be happening.
I haven't talked to, I know there are sites in Canada on the schedule for EEMS to visit. And I think as long as the border restrictions are kind of open, or the border is open for people to, and I know they're all of the EMS people are vaccinated, so they shouldn't have a problem getting in. So it'll all be dependent on the border situation. And I don't recall when, so I think both of your sites are scheduled for the survey. So
Yeah, I think the last correspondence we received from you was August.
Yeah.
It'd be scheduled for August. So okay, great,
so
thanks.
yeah, if it's still, that's still the case.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Any final words, Greg? Amy?
I guess I'll just I'll quote Will Ferrell from Saturday Night Live. Thank you for participating in this mandatory program. So yeah, it's not optional, but you know, I realize that then everybody gets a dry week and life happens, and you know, we all forget stuff. And I did notice though, when I sent out an email not long ago, you know, hey, remember to process your field blank, you know, and it's like all of a sudden there was a barrage of field blanks that got, you know, run. So I think it's just an easy thing to forget about. And, you know, I really do appreciate it when people, you know, make the effort and run the sample. So just thanks to everybody for being conscientious about it.
I had something on top. Oh, future topics. We are open to suggestions. This was our fifth one. I've lost count. We've done so many. But if you have ideas, or if there's a topic for training that you would like to see, reach out to me, and or write it on your field form, and it'll get to me. But yeah, definitely we will cater to what the operators are wanting to learn. So just keep that in mind. And if there's nothing else in the chat, we will end here. So thanks for signing on and participating. Thanks, Amy.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everybody.